Hi there. Welcome to 60 Matthews. I'm Matthew, and today I want to talk about climbing. I've been climbing off and on for over 10 years now, which for me is saying a lot because I usually get bored of stuff after 10 days. To be fair, to say that you're a climber is a very broad statement. That could mean bouldering, top rope climbing, trad climbing, gym climbing, Arctic climbing. There's just a lot of ways that you can climb a wall. For me personally, I started out bouldering. Originally, it was just because I didn't have any friends who climbed, so I didn't have anybody to belay me. But pretty soon after I got into it, it became a very personal and meditative practice for me. I didn't have to worry about meeting up with somebody. I didn't have to worry about tying knots. I didn't have to worry about anything else. All I had to do was just walk into the gym, sign in, put my shoes on, chalk up, and start climbing up the wall. Whenever you first get into it, or at least whenever I got into it, I found a few climbs that I could do and it was kind of fun, but then I found one that I couldn't quite do. It was just out of my ability. Either I wasn't strong enough or I just couldn't think of it the right way, but it became a nemesis for me. I just had to get up there and do it. I would go home and just dream about that climb. So I would go back the next day, figure out how to position my body, and be able to climb up the wall like it was nothing. That moment of getting it was beautiful to me. I remember the first time that climbing taught me something that transcended into my real life. There was this one move where I was up about halfway through the problem and I had to kind of slide over to the next hold. But once you got a little too far over, you were going to come off the wall. You just had to reach over and grab it. And if you couldn't hold on to it, then you were falling off the wall, which I did a lot of times. But after I did it enough, I touched the hold to where I knew that once I got over there, I could actually do it. If I just committed to it, then I was able to grab it and hold on and stick the move. And I remember climbing it for like the 50th time and just thinking, okay, you got this, you know you got this, all you have to do is just slide over and grab it. And as soon as I knew I had it, as soon as my faith strengthened, I just did it. And it was awesome. I remember feeling so elated that I was finally able to progress. And that feeling has never ceased. In fact, that moment is the reason why it's become so meditative for me. I can sit in front of the wall and tune everything else out and just focus on getting to that moment again. I focus all of my mental ability, all of my physical strength into this one moment. Whenever you're on the wall, especially once you get into more advanced routes, it takes literally every single ounce of every single thing that you have. And when you finally do, you realize just how strong you are. You can do things that you've never thought possible. You find the strength within you that you never knew you had. It's just so invigorating and strengthening for your mind, for your body, for your heart, for your soul. It just betters you in every way. A few months ago, I came to another realization about climbing that kind of falls in line with the philosophy of Buddhism. So in the climbing world, we have what we call beta. Some people define it in many different ways, but ultimately it means the most efficient way to climb to the top. And depending on your body type, you can have different beta, which means that a tall, large person can climb something completely differently than a short, skinny person. As a side note, one of the things I love about climbing is that just because you're short doesn't mean that you're not as good of a climber. Because some routes are made better for shorter climbers and some routes are made better for taller climbers. It really just depends. And ultimately, there's no excuse for saying like, oh, I'm too big for this, or I'm too small for this, or I'm too fat for this, or I'm too whatever. There's no excuse to not be able to climb well. Climbing doesn't care who you are or what your body type is. But anyway, back to beta. Another thing that I love about climbing is that just because you don't do it the right way doesn't mean that you can't accomplish the goal. Doesn't mean that you can't get to the top and somebody can look at it and be like, oh, I never thought about doing it that way. You can make up your own way of doing it. It might not be the most efficient, but you can figure it out and you can get there. That's one of the reasons that I love not only climbing myself, but watching other climbers, is figuring out how they do it. To me, my love for climbing is not a physical thing. It does make you more physically fit, but I love the mental challenge far more than I do just seeing how strong I can get. Figuring out your center of gravity and your body position and what way you need to be going in order to move to the next move, and to think kind of 2 or 3 moves ahead so that your body position can move there and be at a good place for the next thing. There's just so much thought that goes into this fairly simplistic looking process. And a lot of times the route setters, the people who set up the moves, most of the time they know the best beta. They know the most efficient way to get to the top. But then they can watch people climb and they do things that they never thought possible, or they find something that they never even realized they could do. There's just somehow this never-ending stock of surprises whenever it comes to climbing. And now to bring all of this back into my Buddhism revelation. So in Buddhism, there's the Eightfold Noble Path, which means, well, it means a whole lot, and I'm not going to get into all of it, but basically it means that there's a beta for the way you run your life. Out of the hundreds of millions of ways that you can go about living your life, there's really only one way that is the most efficient. And it's different for every person. It's not this 10 Commandments thing that like everybody has to adhere to these certain rules, even though there's a general understanding that like what is good and what is bad. But basically, your life will dictate those things more than some superior being that wrote it down on a piece of paper. Basically, that kind of means that you shouldn't kill anybody. Not because somebody told you not to, but because if you do, it will yield bad results later. To bring that back to the climbing metaphor, you can go around the beta. You can go sideways or you can go back down if you want, but that's not going to get you up. Or if the beta is to go sideways, then sure, you can spend a lot of strength going straight up, but if you had gone over to the side and grabbed onto this handhold and kind of went out of your way a little bit to get back on track, you would use a lot less energy. To relate climbing to a real life metaphor, sure, you can spend all of your money on lottery tickets and just hope that one of these times you'll be able to win the jackpot. And sure, if you win the lottery, then you'll be able to go straight up. But you might find that if you go straight up and grab onto what you think is a good hold, it will end up crumbling and falling off and you go tumbling back down to rock bottom. Whereas you could put in a little bit more effort, maybe go to the left, and then ultimately you can find your way around and be back on track again. Ultimately, what I love about this metaphor is that it means that you can go off track and it's okay. You'll be able to come back. It might take you a little bit more effort, it might take you a little bit more time, but just because you go off track doesn't mean that you're doomed or that you're going to hell or your life isn't over. It just means that you need to use a little bit more energy and be creative in finding your beta. Now, all of this I learned just in bouldering, and that's not to mention top rope climbing, trad climbing, nature climbing, Arctic climbing, all the different ways that you can climb. There are many other lessons and many more things that you can gain from climbing. There is a huge community built around it. We're in the 2020 Olympics. It's a way for you to get outside and get into nature. It's a way for you to learn something about yourself. It's a way for you to find strength within yourself that you never knew you had. It's a way for you to get mental clarity. It's just so many things. So please, make it out to your local climbing gym. Go find the nearest climbing trails around you. Find someone who has a harness and a rope, or someone with a crash pad, and just go out and enjoy it. I promise you won't be disappointed. That's all I have for today. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.
Don't want a complication.